go into a classroom, with 30 kids in front of you and expect it to teach it the way that works for me, that I understand it best, is going to work for everybody in this room. I can't look at my children as a parent and say, how I operate is how each one of my kids is going to operate. Or even like, I know my oldest well, because, they were oldest. I've had them longest. And everyone else, the younger ones are going to operate just like that first one did, right? We cannot have these assumptions. Hi, I'm Amber.
And I'm Elayna. We're glad you're here to join us where
everything is learning.
Hey there.
Hey.
So I'm really excited today, so I'm just going to jump right in. What do you think?
I love it. I love the excitement. It makes me excited.
Okay, good.
Yes, I'm ready. I mean, I hope I'm ready. I'm ready with coffee, so we'll see how it goes.
All right. That's promising. That's promising stuff.
It's a good start.
It's a great start.
That's very true.
So we talked a lot about our experiences with our personal learning journeys.
Yeah.
But I kept thinking about, I know for me, because I questioned so much, the main question for me was, where do I start? And what do I really need to know to get started?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, for sure. Because it's such a big undertaking.
For sure.
Right.
And I think that's the other piece of it too, is I think getting started, initiating tasks is difficult at any age, but
oh gosh, yeah.
It's just
especially scary ones.
Right.
Especially big ones with lots of pieces.
Yeah. And
hello, executive functioning.
True that. I don't know. I was getting to the part where it's the most essential part to get our learning journeys going was just from your and my conversation experiences. It was just to understand and celebrate and accept this concept that there's only one you, period.
Yeah.
I really think it's so important to take a minute to let that sink in, because the concept seems minute on the surface.
Right? How many times have you been told that or whatever? You know what I mean?
Right.
At least here in America, that's a very common trope. Yeah.
For sure. It's definitely, I think it definitely is a cultural thing. I do think, there's just so many pieces to it, but the concept of the fact that in all of history, in all of time, in all of the world, there will only ever be one you, that is mind-boggling to sit with.
It really is. Especially when you sit and think about how the stars have to align in so many ways.
Yeah, just for you to even exist.
For a baby to... Exactly. So, and then all that comes together so uniquely.
Right.
Even, compared to siblings or other people you grow up alongside, you're it.
Right.
You're it.
It's wild.
I know.
And, you and I, we had that understanding growing up. I think we did. I don't think we fully walked into that part of our learning journey, though, until our 30s.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
That's when the epiphanies about learning started happening, was in our 30s.
I think deeper ones. I think for me, along the way, we've had some, but
for sure.
Definitely as I gotten older and reflecting and then as you learn about learning, right? That's been our career paths. It's been interesting to kind of have this space and time in our lives, like we talked about, to actually reflect and learn ourselves more. And I love that it's something I see all over social media these days. People, older people just exploring and actually learning themselves and being I feel like I've went along with the flow of traffic for too long, and I lost sense of what car I'm in.
Oh, yeah.
And they let me figure myself out. Hang on a second.
I love that for people who are older, because they're not going to let themselves go their whole lives without really knowing themselves.
Right.
And in a society where boxes exist, comparison is constant, and your outward presentation of self is so flaunted, it takes a lot of work to get to a healthy place of self-understanding and love and acceptance. It really does.
It's a journey. It's a journey, right? Especially if it's not one that you were started on early in life. It's a journey. What I also love about it, starting it later in life, is that you realize that it's kind of hard to start later in life. So maybe anyone that's younger than me, that I'm in the sphere of influence of where, maybe I can help them understand themselves early on.
Right.
And like you said, acceptance, like there's so much that we might know things about ourselves, but it's been presented to us in such a negative slant, or you know what I mean?
Or such a
Growing up, I
positive
was told
slant.
right, where like maybe it should be, there
Should
is a
be a
middle
little the
ground.
opposite. Yeah.
Right? Right. Yeah, there's a middle line. And so starting to look at yourself with neutrality as just, this is a fact about myself.
Right.
And then, because what I love about this is I get so excited, just get so excited. Because what I love about it is when you're learning yourself, it opens up the door for that limitless transformation we've talked about, because we're
Yes.
not done.
Right.
You've just uncovered something. And when you move a rock and you uncover a seedling, you know what it does? It grows and it changes even more into something else.
Right.
So it's just like you're uncovering pieces of yourself and letting parts of yourself blossom and maybe pruning away some other ones.
Right.
Oh my God, the metaphors are going to be rampant today. Like, they're buckle in, kids. It's going to be a long road. My brain loves metaphors. My brain works in pictures.
Right.
And metaphors to me just help me make such a better understanding of things, because I can see that picture and then make that comparison like the metaphor does, and it just really helps. So I love metaphors and pictures. They're my favorite.
Right. Yeah, so, I wouldn't say it's weird. I'm not necessarily like, I like visuals in my head. And it's not that I don't like seeing visuals. I love photography. I love, different pieces like that. But when somebody gives me a metaphor and I can take my own perspective on it, and I can see my own picture, so I can see what they're coming up with and how it relates to my life to personalize it.
Right.
I love that. I love that.
Right.
I think that's so helpful. I think that's
why I like abstract art.
Yes.
I think that's why I like, okay, I'm going to say rules, but not like the ones I have to follow that are inflicted by somebody else. But I like finding patterns and themes and things, because then I can apply it in lots of different ways.
Right.
So yeah, I'm with you. And I love that we know all these things about ourselves, because it's so important. Like, we've taken this time to understand ourselves and learn ourselves.
Right.
I just think it's so important, because while it's so true that there's uniquely one of us, right? Mm-hmm. What that means is that everybody else is different from me.
Right.
Right? Like, that converse is true at the same time. Because I'm unique, everyone else is different. And that's the other piece of this, that in understanding yourself, also keeping in mind that everyone else is operating differently than me.
Right.
Right.
Because so everyone has a different brain, a different experience, a different
Right. Exactly. We've got different strengths, different backgrounds, different weaknesses. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So as I'm learning myself, I cannot assume that these same things apply to other people. But I can be aware of how maybe this one thing is what I do in this situation. How does someone else do it? And kind of then find the comparison, but don't expect that someone will be the same. Right. As a teacher, I can't walk and stand in front of a class. Don't sit in front of a class. I promise. I always stood in front of a class. No, I didn't always stand. Oh God, I feel like I'm in one of my evaluations right now. I don't always stand in front of the class. I move around between the students. Okay. But you can't go into a classroom, with 30 kids in front of you and expect it to teach it the way that works for me, that I understand it best, is going to work for everybody in this room. Right. I can't look at my children as a parent and say, how I operate is how each one of my kids is going to operate.
Sure.
Or even I know my oldest well, because, they were oldest. I've had them longest. And everyone else, the younger ones, are going to operate just like that first one did.
Right.
Right. We cannot have these assumptions.
Yeah. Assumptions are crippling. I don't know that there are. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Are there positives to assumptions? I don't know. Maybe if you assume the best in people. There you go.
Yes.
That might be a positive assumption.
Yeah, negative assumption. Right.
Right.
I mean, but because this seems like a neutral assumption, but it can be a negative assumption.
Sure.
So that's kind of an interesting thought too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And extending again, taking all of what we talk about It works in the classroom, it works as a parent, but it works at work as well, right? As a manager, as a boss, even as an employee, I can't look at everybody else and assume that they're understanding the process the same way, or that even that their strengths will align with their job description in the way that mine align with mine.
Right.
My strength aligns with my job description, right?
Hmm.
We're all just so different. And it's, are you ready for another metaphor?
Oh, bring it on.
Okay, okay, okay. This one I think you're going to like. Knowing you, I, my musical theater friend, I think you're going to
Yeah.
like this one.
All right.
All
Let it
right.
rip.
One of the ways I kind of have started looking at each of us is kind of like the sound and light board, the tech board,
Okay.
in a theater.
Okay.
And so we've got all these different toggles or levers that we can move up, that are moved up and down and adjusted, right? All those kind of sound control pieces. You with me?
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm talking about? Okay.
I'm just
And
visualizing while
like
you're talking.
these toggles, okay, cool, cool, cool. Uh, these toggles, a lot of them might have some prerequisite settings based on how our brain is just wired out of the factory,
Okay.
essentially, right? Um, and but then other ones are kind of like built in from like maybe our cultures, that we're raised in, or the community we're raised in, family experiences, access to curiosity, like all these different things impact all of our specific soundboards.
Okay.
So, like, we might both have the toggle of curiosity, but it might be set at different levels, right?
Oh.
Or, based on my experiences growing up, maybe my curiosity toggle feels like it has a preset that I can't go beyond. But
Yeah.
it's just a little sticky. It's just some jam that got stuck in there from the sound guy having his peanut butter and jelly. You know what I mean? It can be adjusted, but it doesn't feel like it's just stuck. Or whatever the case, like, we all have different boards, different toggles, different levels of them. But there's commonality between us. We just, we can find these things.
What do you think is common on these boards? Because I love it. I'm there. I'm like visualizing it. I'm wondering like, yeah, like what's on your soundboard or tech board, or what are
I
some
mean, I'm
things that
thinking
maybe have
like, well,
changed?
on my personal tech board,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think my curiosity has changed a little bit, and maybe in how I use it now.
Okay.
I'm also just understanding more of my parts of my toggles, right? Like
Okay.
how maybe like my love for visuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's because I might have like a high visual processing speed, so it just makes sense to me. But like my auditory processing, not very good, not as good. It needs support from some other tools.
Oh, I like
So just kind
that.
of like learning about how these different pieces of me. So because we've all got like developmental stages that we went through,
Yeah.
right? And there's an average norm of these, but even following through, you can learn so much about us as we go through these stages, right? There are cognitive factors that we all have, mental health factors, but they're all different within us. But these are like common overall factors, I guess you could, or toggle areas, maybe
Yeah.
labels, maybe. Okay.
Sure.
Even schooling experiences, right? Like that would be we all are learning experiences. We all have learning experiences, but they're very different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
You know what I mean?
crazy. Yeah, I love the visual of it because w- as somebody who's worked sound light boards, tech boards, it's really interesting because you can walk into different theaters and they look different, but they do have a lot of similarities. So I saw that. I'm like,
And they
okay,
do
if
the
I walk
same
into the
job,
booth,
essentially,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
they shine light, they make the sound work. Every now
Yeah.
and then there might be glitches in those two things,
Sure.
but overall they accomplish the same tasks.
Yeah, it's so cool to think about because like if you walk into a different theater, you're going to be able to see, like I was thinking about if I walk into your sound booth, light booth, like what yours looks like versus mine. And then I started thinking about
Mine has a
um
lot of jam in the toggles.
I love that. Um, but I was
That's
thinking about
funny.
how personalized they are, and then it kind of led me to think about my twins, and
Right.
I was thinking about them, and I was like,
Oh,
gosh, their boards are
yes.
so
Can I just
different.
tell you, like, in psychology studies for so long, twins were like the most studied because
It's
they're like, well,
wild.
they're pretty much the same, so let's experiment with them. We can learn.
Couldn't be more wrong.
I know. It's
Isn't that
fascinating,
wild?
right? What we learned is, tell me how yours are
Yeah.
so different. I know they are. I
No,
love
I
it.
mean it's just kind of like when I look at them and I think like because now when they wake up from nap time, I'm gonna be like, oh gosh, I'm just gonna be thinking about how every single moment of their existence is like they're taking in a new toggle. They're like creating a new toggle. They're
Right.
taking in information constantly. I love this stage. There's so many toggles. It's like all over. Like they're
Or
like
like
there's just
adjusting the levels of them or whatever, or like
yeah.
yeah,
Well, day to
finding
day
new
they
ones. Hey, this one's over
adjust.
here. Right.
Right, and it's like as
Right.
infants we probably
They're
had
adjusting, they're uncovering new ones.
yeah, we probably had a billion toggles to start. Think about it. Like
Yeah.
no one is no one is telling you how to adjust or reorganize or take away or influence that information. Like it's wild to
Yeah.
really go back and
They're all on
reflect
like full
on
blast. Yeah.
yeah, like and and over time obviously society gets involved, like there are specific expectations. It becomes your experience becomes personalized by your learning mentors around you, but like if I think about my board from when I was like a toddler to where I am now, gosh, I probably lost so many toggles along the way. Um,
A lot of mine got muted for sure.
yeah, it's just an interesting thing to like visualize and think about the different toggles that maybe I'll create in the future. I mean, certainly becoming a parent,
Opens a whole
like
new. It's almost like you had to buy an extension for your soundboard.
it's just and
It's
like
like
where
I
I'll
need
go
the
in the
add-on
future.
package now. Thank you.
Right, exactly.
I
It
don't
was
get the instruction
definitely
manual. I just get a new section of my board.
correct. It's a blank board.
Right?
But yeah, I don't know. It's so exciting to think about. I love that metaphor. I think that that makes so much sense.
I think it's really helpful. Again, like when you're learning yourself, kind of gives you some avenues to look at and how you became who you are, right?
Right.
At the same time, it helps with again understanding other people because
Yes.
I can understand a certain toggle of mine and then say, where's your toggle? Like where's yours of that one? How does your toggle in this area operate? Is it
Right.
similar, different? You know what I mean? Um, because I think that's what's interesting too, is kind of finding it allows us to find connection points and then learn
Yeah.
more. Because just because we
Right.
connect doesn't mean it's the exact same, but like we can learn more about ourselves and others through finding by looking at each other as these different toggles, or
Right. And I think also understanding that like if I don't have a toggle, I can learn from somebody else who does have that toggle, or if I don't have mine like all the way on max capacity, but I see somebody who does, like I can figure out
right.
strategies to help. And I think you're
Or
hitting
I
on
have mine on max capacity.
right. And I need to
Or I'm sorry to interrupt you. Or
no,
like
you're
I
good.
have mine on max capacity. Maybe I do need to tone it down. Like maybe I do need it
Right.
more. Or like, yeah, maybe I didn't realize that I had muted this toggle
A
20
long time
years
ago.
ago.
Right.
And I can brush that dust off now and unplug it and kind of see why I muted it, what happened to that, and like where do I want it now in my life. Right? Because
Oh,
just once we find out where we are now, again, we're not done. We get to
right.
adjust. You keep adjusting and you keep finding new ones or uncovering ones we like, the ones from a baby that we shut down over time. Maybe now
Right.
they're on again, or you can turn them back on. I think that's why I
You
get so
just
interested and excited about learning, you know?
yeah, no, for sure. And I think you just hit on something that's really essential for this first kind of step into a learning journey
Mm-hmm.
is like these initial steps, they take grit and perseverance because
Ooh-wee.
you're hinting at relearning and unlearning what went wrong, what went right. We're assessing and reflecting if
Right.
old toggles should go back on or if I should be adding new toggles and getting rid of those toggles, like an update. Like,
Right,
and the
exactly.
ultimate yeah,
I
and
need an
like
iOS update.
I think we need that. I think for me, like that version is like sitting down and actually like reflecting, you know?
I think that's why we did have these revelations later in life, is that we did have just a major a major reboot, you know?
Well, and
We
I think
got a system update,
societally,
and that's what allowed us to.
yeah, you're 100% right. I think society doesn't allow us that kind of time, or it doesn't encourage that. It encourages us in our like
Right.
teens to push through high school. It encourages us in our 20s to get a job and you know, get married and
hustle,
start a
hustle,
family. Or
hustle.
yeah, it's just all hustle. So
Where
like
reflection takes that time piece that we've often talked, you know, we've talked about so many times.
And for us, for two people who busted their butts at their own expense constantly, in our professions, in our families, etc., the pandemic allowed us that time that we would have probably never taken to sit down. I know for me, I wouldn't have. And I think that helped me to learn that the ultimate challenge is to accept and understand myself through each period of my life. And we've
100%.
talked about it, you know, we've talked about it from the start of like this conversation. It's just vital for starting on your learning journey to be able to understand and adapt your own personalized board, you know, to continue to help yourself grow, to understand others, to change, to learn, etc. Like that's where limitless transformation comes into play.
100%.
And that's where like the excitement to start, I think, comes from. Is just that joy.
100%. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked recently about like what we've realized later, now-ish.
Right.
What about early on for you? Like, what was one of the earliest memories that that you can think of that of your brain working differently in some way in any one of these toggles?
Oh man. I'm just taking a second to process that. Yeah.
Right.
Because the first thing that came to mind, like honestly, I knew pretty early on. I have a sister who's older. She's 14 months older than me. So we were like right behind each other in school. And she was like, she still is. She's very gifted. She's just an effortless learner. And I
love it.
Was honestly the total opposite. Like, and honestly, looking back, it's so familiar. Cool. She's phenomenal. She really is. Like it's so cool to like be. I've actually been able to be in classrooms with her. I've played sports with her, like just because we're so close in age. But we also did our master's degrees like at the same time and stuff. So like I got to see her. It's so cool. Like I got to see her in a classroom. It's just wild. Like she's the best. But she was so curious about everything. So she just and maybe it's the oldest thing. I don't know. And I know that might not be true in every family, but I think she
might just be part of how her brain works. Yeah.
Yeah. She just embraces limitless potential like no one I've ever met. And, you know, coming up right after her in school, like we were constantly compared and I couldn't have been more polar opposite from her. So like we have different temperaments, different interests, different methods of approaching
I
people.
Understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, no. It's like, I know with you and your siblings too, like sometimes it's polar opposites and sometimes it's like similarities are wild. And then you grow up in the same house and you're just like, nah, really? Like, how did that all happen? But no, I mean, the list goes on and on with her and I, but I think the first time I probably, if I'm really being honest with my memory, that I probably realized was maybe in first grade.
Okay.
Yeah, like 7-ish years old. Like we would go to after school care.
Nice.
And
okay.
I would trade this is aging me, but I would trade like baseball cards and like Pogs after school with the boys in my grade and a few grades above me. Pogs. Oh my God, I love Pogs.
It.
No, it didn't make any sense.
You had the tube?
It
was
everything.
The dumbest thing ever.
No,
but you had to have the plastic tube that held your cardboard Pogs.
Oh, I also had metal slammers. Like
Stop.
Please. Yeah, no, oh no.
I haven't got into it, but I did. I mean, never had a slammer. I don't know that I actually ever played, but I did have them.
Oh no, first off, I collected
never
them
leave
they
home
were
without
pretty.
Pogs.
Yeah.
They were cool.
They were cool. Really cool. It was very long memory cut short. I would trade.
Right.
I would love trading baseball cards. I have an obsession with baseball. I have since I was young. my dad, I think, wished that all three of us girls were boys, but it is what it is.
Preach,
But
I
I would
understand.
do this thing where I would trade like 4 rookie cards or like 4 cards of popular current players from like the 90s. And I would trade them for like 1 baseball legend. So the system, there was like a rules.
Smart.
See, you think it's smart,
Okay.
and now it
Yeah.
probably seems smart. Back then, okay, so here were the rules. So we were allowed to sit in a circle, and then the 2 people who were trading,
Okay.
those would be the only 2 people who could talk. So we're like in this room with like
This
50
is
kids
amazing.
sitting here, and we're trading across from each other. And we're like, okay,
Wow.
you can't talk during the trade because, of course, everyone has an opinion. So as soon as you made your final agreement, like your handshake,
Right.
people would start screaming. They'd be like, oh my gosh, like, why did you just do that? And inevitably, most of my trades were seen as like dumb or ridiculous
I'm
or
riveted.
I got screwed, whatever.
Yeah.
So I realized that everyone else seemed ridiculous to me because I was walking home with Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, like
Right.
super, super popular players. And they were walking home with like 4 cards that I could have cared less about because I got them out of my dentist's treasure chest box and I could go back and get them
Not
whenever
the
I wanted.
Not the treasure chest.
So like,
Doc, I got another cavity. I need another low
yeah, give me
low
another
ranking
player
baseball
pack.
card. Give me some other crap
give me a Cal
cards.
Ripken. Like, no, I mean, so
Yes.
ridiculous. But this
Oh
is the
my
memory that
god,
popped
that's
into
so
it.
funny.
But it's like
It's genius.
it felt that way when I was younger. But
Oh my
even
god.
though someone, I realized, even though someone had more, it didn't
Yeah.
mean that they had something better. And
Right.
I think that was kind of where I was like, okay, first off, I'm obviously internalizing because I'm a girl. I'm the only girl who's really trading these things. But
Right.
also,
Sure.
so I was like, I was very self-conscious about it. But at the same time, I was like, oh my gosh. And I still have some of these cards, by the way, like in my basement. But I still have some of these and
Oh my
I
gosh.
treasure them. Like I do. And then I also like, I
As
haven't
you
gone
should.
through. It's just, anyway. Okay, anyway, what about you? Same question. How did you, like, when did you know? When did you know
No.
your brain was different?
Well, I should have gone first because that was a way better story. Because mine is not very exciting, not super interesting. Like, I think it took me a while to realize that my brain was different.
Mm.
And I'm not to this day sure if that's just because I had like tunnel vision. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I could go into it. Anyway, this is not a counseling session, but it did take me a while to realize. And I think it might be because like all the brains around me were different. And we all just, it was kind of just like, okay, that to me, that's how it felt. Like, yeah, we're all just different. Okay. And like, it felt neutral. I don't think that's how other people experienced it, even close to me people, but for me, that's how I felt. Like, it was just, okay, fine. And like, I was fortunate to go to a school that really fit my brain, fit how I learn, all that kind of stuff. And other people that at my school seemed to learn similarly to me. I had great teachers. I was always like challenged at just the right amount. So I could like all that kind of stuff. I never really noticed anything. I never felt out of place, at least in terms of how my brain worked. Probably out of place for lots of other reasons, but and like from a young age, I remember just noticing what worked for me. And it wasn't like, didn't really compare it. I was just like, okay, so this is what I need. I need this. This works. Okay. And really it's because I wanted to do it fast without a whole lot of effort. So I tried to learn how I could do that. And my mom would help us with our homework, and she functions the same way. So she would give us tricks that she uses to remember things or like shortcuts to solve a problem.
Oh, I love that.
Like, I remember being in Bell's Outlet because I grew up in Florida. So if you know, you know. And it's just like a outlet store, clothes store, right? TJ Maxx kind of a vibe. And there was a sale, 20% off. There was a shirt I wanted. Hey, mom, how much is 20% off of these, $20 pants? And she's like, I don't know, figure it out. And then went to give me a shortcut for how to figure it out. where she does, well, if I'm not paying for 20%, I am paying for 80%. So I can take 80% of $20 to estimate the cost. How do I do that? Well, I do 8 times 2, 16. You're going to pay $16 for that. About.
Yeah.
So like all those quick mental math shortcuts, not only was I getting them at school, but like my mom used them all the time and she would just have us use them. So I don't know, just I grew up just surrounded with learning what works for you, and here are some ways to kind of hack your brain essentially, like just do it faster. Um I do though, the thing that comes to mind, I guess, very different from your answer. Um and probably different from the question originally. But when I went to college, I realized that not everyone had similar experiences, not even close to same, but like not even similar ones.
Right.
They didn't have that same experience of having two parents in the home, one of which
Right.
was a stay-at-home mom and helped us with our homework and things like that. Um, and both my parents were involved in our schooling and in our lives. And then, just the fact that not everyone had a positive school experience
Right.
in all those ways. And that to me stood out a lot. And that's what I really, when I noticed that, I don't think I still noticed that my brain was quite different yet, but I realized that this experience was very different. And so my relationship to school was very different than other people.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah,
It's
it's
true
kind of
though.
interesting. Because I think like experiences is one of these toggles, right? Like these, or at least these, our experiences might shape some of these toggles. I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah,
Um,
influence. For sure they influence, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And especially these learning ones, as we're going about our learning journeys, I think if I'm starting with learning myself, I might want to like kind of reflect on my learning experiences,
Hmm.
because we've all had different ones. So like, what was ours like, and then how did that impact us as a learner? Right? I
Yeah.
had teachers that were amazing, and they always gave us very interesting assignments. Like one year, we third grade with Mrs. Oh, I see her. What was her last name? Green, maybe? Doesn't feel right. Um, anyway, it was her science class, and we were learning about the rainforest, all the different not habitats. What is it? Like the tundra and
Ecosystems?
biomes,
Oh,
biomes.
biomes.
So we're learning about the rainforest.
Hmm.
So we each picked a different animal, a different plant that was in the rainforest. They like all research on them and then like created them.
Hmm.
She turned her whole portable classroom into a rainforest, and like other classes would come walk through. So like we learned in a rainforest, had all of our animals hung up or on trees. Like she'd put trees up on the walls, went all out. It was like such an interactive learning experience that like that to me is how I love learning and how I think we should all learn. I learned how I've realized how many people didn't have anything like that growing
I
up.
know, isn't that's
So like
wild.
learning to me is exciting because of those experiences I had.
Yeah, that makes sense.
My partner, on the other hand, he had experiences of like when he would ask questions, teachers would get upset with him. Either because they couldn't
Mm.
answer the question and they felt like he was being disrespectful by asking a question that they couldn't answer, or whatever it was. But he was just curious and logical and wanted information. He said this really was worse in like his Bible classes in Catholic school. They really didn't like that. But such a different experience. Whereas like at my school, if you ask questions, teachers were like, yeah, 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 give me more. Let's all throw like let's have a debate now. And it became like fodder for learning and we all got excited about.
Yeah. All right, that's just
Yeah.
we know being from experiencing both sides of the traditional learning fence as
Mm-hmm.
learning mentors and as learners that not everyone has a positive traditional education
Right.
or just even learning experiences like outside of formal traditional
Right.
educational settings or learning settings.
Yes.
And my whole thing, I've said it 100 times to you, but on a global level, learning is the most inequitable thing on earth. It's intangible, it's happening all the time. It's different based on
Right.
cultures, socioeconomic statuses, like learning mentors, opportunities, access. It's just it
Right.
it like breaks my heart that that's the case, but that's also why we're talking about this because everything is learning. Everyone can create their own access. Everyone can create,
Yes.
especially with support and with community and different things like that. I want to continue to encourage people because it is so inequitable. And I think that's another piece to all of this is like there's only one you. You're influenced by
Right.
everything that's happened in your life so far. but you can still transform. You can still change.
Yes. And like you said, create new learning experiences for yourself, formal or informal. Right. I love the informal ones nowadays, but like, you can do whatever you want. And realizing that if a system didn't work for you and you're learning, you have the power to create a different system for yourself now, or for, you know, or to make change somehow.
Right.
Like that. I love that part. I love that part.
Yeah.
I get one of my next things I would look at, moving through kind of like questions I would ask myself as I'm getting to know myself, is as a learner, how do I take information in? No. Like, what are some of those requirements? You know what I mean? And like I told you, I'm a visual learner. I like pictures. Even if someone's just straight talking to me, I'm going to have to write it down or something, because I need to see it again later. It just won't stick as much unless it's a song and put to music.
Oh, I dance a lot when I study.
I like watching somebody do something, and then I'll be like, I know how to do it now. Can I tell the number of times that I have, as we're watching like a show about people in Alaska and how they'll, you know, building out in their cabins and things like that, I'll turn to my partner and say, I could build a cabin. Just because now I've watched them do it 15 times. Like, I know I could do that.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not naive enough to go think I'm going to do it perfectly the first time. But like, because of how my brain works, if I see it happen and I can put the pieces together in my brain, I now have a plan of attack. And once I have a plan of attack, I can do anything.
Yeah. So modeling is big for you.
Modeling is huge for me. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then having the chance to do it. I need it modeled, and then I need to do it, and I need to learn from what works and what doesn't work, and align those two things.
Right.
So, like, I have to get my hands dirty after I see it done.
Yeah. I mean, learning from your mistakes, I think, is such a huge part of learning, which is a whole other piece to understanding yourself, too, is how you understand failure or making mistakes, etc. And how you...
Oh, that's a good point. Using that as something also, this entry point for learning yourself is, how do you define some of those terms?
Oh, for sure.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I think
like,
it's super important.
How do I define what is failure to me? Yeah.
Yep.
What is success to me? And does success always mean the same thing, or can I adjust my definitions as I go?
Oh, yeah, no. From where I started to where I am now, oh my gosh, failure. You talked about how you were as a student, and how like you would have these conversations with your mom and stuff. I was very fortunate to have a mother who would sit with me during my third grade breakdowns, and through high school. Where I was up till like 2:45
because you weren't making a rainforest. I'm sorry.
No, you know what? When you said the rainforest thing, I thought of my PE class.
It was Mrs. Gould.
Oh, good, because if she listens to this, you have to.
It really bothered me that I couldn't remember her name, because I could see her face. And then she later got married and was Gould Olson. Oh, if anyone was curious. She was amazing.
Shout out to Mrs. Gould Olson.
Shout out Miss Gould Olson. Or whatever your name may be these days.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you
for such good memories.
I was thinking about my PE teacher, Mr. K, when we would do like harder physical education units. He made a whole rainforest for us to go through. There was like a rainforest game that we all used to play. And like we would do like Star Wars week, and he would have like all these different Star Wars characters, like cutouts and stuff. And he would make these different, and this is physical education class. Like, he didn't need to do all that. He could have just said, run a mile. He could have said, like with square dancing, like we could dress up, like,
square dancing in 5th grade. That is such a weird concept.
It really is. It really is.
I'm biting my tongue. I have so many things to say about it, but this is not the time or the place
right
now.
I've got like so many things.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay, let me ask you a question. Why do you think understanding oneself is important to sustaining a long-term love of learning or a curiosity of learning? Like, why is it important? Like, you and I know the value of it, but like, why? I don't know if I've ever asked you, why do you think it's so important?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think one of the things, and I'm probably going to speak this more from just my personal experience. I haven't done like vast research on this that I could speak of. But for me anyway, it's been, the more I learn myself, I learned that other people might have similar needs in that
Mm-hmm.
category, right? Or that category of need. It just might look different from mine.
Mm.
So, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. What I think my favorite part is, and the more I learn, the more I uncover my favorite part. But I think it is the connections that it allows me to have.
Yeah.
Especially as especially as an educator, but also as like a partner, a friend, sibling. I can find these connection points with people and relate to that and be like, okay, so if was my struggle and they're having a struggle, then maybe how can I help them based on what happened to me or whatever? It's not going to be the same, but it helps me identify or understand other people better,
Yeah. I
you
love
know?
that. I love one of the
And
things that
again,
you
my brain
say.
also is very much like I can see the forest for the trees. Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, no, I was just gonna say one of the things that you say that I know I've like adopted in talking to other people who I help or work with is like everyone's worthy of being given what they need to learn best.
Yeah.
And I never really had a great way of saying that, but I firmly believe that. And I think that's what you're hinting at is, the respect and deserving, like people need to meet you where you're at. And they don't have to, because that's the difficulty, right, with learning, and that's the inequitable part sometimes too. But
Right.
everyone deserves that. And we do all
Exactly.
deserve it. And I use that word very lightly as well, because a lot of people don't think anyone deserves anything in life. But I just, I firmly believe that. And I think that everyone deserves to get their needs met so that they can experience life more fully. And that, again, is why we're doing what we're doing,
Fully.
because
Exactly.
learning is what helps you do that.
Right. And learning yourself helps you find what you need,
Right.
right? As you're uncovering all these other things, you're uncovering all these amazing strengths that you have. And you might be finding some what you might seem or deem as weaknesses. Um, but remembering that every weakness is buildable, right?
Right.
So you can, even if it's a weakness now, we can work on that. You've got strengths that you can use to build up that whatever weakness or compensate for, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Knowing yourself helps you learn what you need and helps you recognize other people have need. Because once we start figuring it out and once we start figuring out what we need, we can help others find what they need. Yeah. And it goes back to just this. You asked earlier, what do we all have in common?
Mm.
We all have needs, first off. We all have strengths, and we all have the ability to keep learning,
Yes.
right? Like, I mean, there are countless studies on neuroplasticity. There are countless studies on just the ability for our brain to keep on learning. And I think there's this really great quote by Ross Cunnington. He's a professor at the School of Psychology in Australia,
Mm.
Queensland, Australia, University of Queensland, Australia. So he would say this in a much cooler accent, but I'll say it in mine. And he says, in reality, the way your brain develops is determined both by your genetics and by your learning and your experiences. Biological does not mean predetermined. Your brain is
Mm.
shaped by your experiences and is never fixed, but continues to change along with learning across the lifespan. We know that we can keep learning because we just do, right? Everything is learning and we constantly are adapting, changing, taking in new information. We can harness that ability to make ourselves better over time. And
Right.
to me, that's the goal. By
Yeah.
learning myself, helping those around me learn themselves, accepting each other as we are, but also loving each other enough to push beyond that and to keep going, to keep bettering ourselves, then we get to a better place as a whole in all of the world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it really does come down to everyone is a learner.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a different brain,
Right.
personalized life experiences, emotional impacts. It's a joy to live in a world with limitless transformation and
Yes.
a world of learning and celebrating you for all that you are, even if it means just exploring a little bit at a time. It's not easy, but it is worth it.
Yes. 100% worth it. And like, I probably say this all the time about my favorite parts of learning, but this is probably one of my favorite parts of us as humans, right? That learning how we are each different and learning from each other. And doing this, digging into yourself, and then, then going on and digging into others. You know what that requires? It requires us to be curious.
Yeah,
I think
curiosity.
that's one of those big toggles on our boards is curiosity.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so
we got to talk about that next time then.
Yes.
All right.
That sounds good. All right.
I will catch you later.
Nice chatting with you.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Everything is Learning.
We'll catch you next time.